Welcome! Just to let you know that James and I chatted so long that I decided to make 2 videos. At the time, I thought it would be one video, so I only filmed one intro, so let me briefly introduce this one. We'll examine the Navy Enigma protocol, a lesser-known problem solved by Alan Turing independent of the codebreakers who originally cracked Enigma. See the link down below for our other video where we discuss the imitation game and its many inaccuracies. Enjoy!
When you talk about Enigma to people, they'll normally mention army stuff. So I thought it'd be nice to do something a bit different today. We'll talk about why the Navy was different. So it looks like a typewriter, works like a typewriter. You type your message into this machine, imagine a keyboard, type your message in, and instead of printing on paper, your code would actually light up. So there's actually 2 sets of letters, keyboard here, second set of letters, and they light up. So you press a letter, and your code letter will light up. As an example, press an A, T lights up. That's your code. A becomes T. That gets transmitted by Morse code, something like that. So you're turning your message into a code. The Germans need to know what the setting is. So now the German at the other end, they're receiving the message. Obviously, they can't read it. It's in code. They've got a second Enigma machine. They set their machine to the same setting as the first machine. Type the code in, and it will decode the message for you. So type the code in, get the original message back. So it's a code and decode machine. Okay, so that's the code machine. Now this is hard code to break because in one part there's a lot of possibilities. So they do say this in the film. So they've got 3 wheels inside the machine. So that's like a combination lock. So you can set these 3 wheels in different positions. And at the front of the machine, they have wires at the front of the machine. That's called the plug board.
Yeah.
And if I move the position of those wires, I'm changing the code. And that's a lot of possibilities here. So if you wire up the front of the machine, lots of possibilities, and 3 wheels at the top of the machine. So they say, number of settings, 159 million. And that changes every day. How it worked is not every message was sent with the same setting, because if you send every message with your same setting and every day there's hundreds of messages, that's a clue for code breakers. Every message had its own secret setting. So every day in your instructions you're told which wheels to use. There are 3 wheels in the machine out of a choice of 5. So 60 possibilities when you're picking 3 out of a box of 5. Put them in the correct order as you're told, and you're told how to set these wires at the front. Right, so everyone's done that. Now every message has its own message setting. So in your instructions you're given something called a ground setting, which is the initial position of the 3 wheels. Maybe the instructions say today's ground setting is, and I'll pick something at random. So I'm setting that. That's like a combination lock. You set your wheels like that. Now the operator can now pick his own secret setting for the message. Right? Maybe let's make it easy. Let's say it's ABC. So now he's picked that's going to be the secret setting for the message. But he's going to send that in code to the other person. So he's picked this, and he's going to use the Enigma machine itself to do that. So he set it to the instructions. He's now going to type ABC into the Enigma machine.
Yeah, got it.
And that's going to make 3 letters of code. He actually does it twice. So it now makes 6 letters of code. It's got 6 letters of code, goes ABC, ABC. 6 letters of code, and he puts that at the beginning of the message. So we're going to have 6 letters of code at the beginning of the message, and I'm going to make some letters up. So now the person at the other end receives the message. They receive these 6 letters here at the beginning of the message. They've set their machine to the ground setting, which they've got on their instructions. They decode this first. If they decode this, they'll get ABC, ABC. You now know it's ABC, ABC. They do it twice to be sure. Right? They get ABC, ABC, and they know ABC is the secret setting for the rest of the message. You set your machine to ABC, and you can decode the rest of the message. So this is a little bit of code at the beginning of your message, which is different for each message. And the operator themselves could pick that.
Got it.
Right, now, that's what they initially did. I said that this ground setting was written down on their instructions. Actually, in the war, they then changed that so that the operator could pick their own 3 letters here as their own ground setting. So now every message had its own separate ground setting, and then they did the rest.
Got it.
And then they had a secret message setting here.
Yeah.
So they could pick their own setting for that, and that would be sent in plain. So now they're sending 9 letters at the beginning. 3 letters in plain, which is helping you decode the 6 letters here, which is the secret setting for the message that comes after it.
Got it. Right. So, because if these were written down and sent out, then presumably the Allies could possibly intercept these and get the setting.
Yeah.
But then they might not know the system for then how to then reset the machine based on the initial.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, so, and if you can capture code books, by the way, and you may be thinking this, if you can capture code books, you'll know what the settings for each day is, you'll know the ground setting, fantastic, and that's true, and if we can get those, it happens sometimes, great. These code books lasted a month, so at the end of the month, you're back to square one, but still, great. It happens sometimes, but not that often. So most of the time, the code breakers are working without those code books. So we're trying to break into this code without capturing German code books.
And even then, you might not know the protocol for
And the protocol is part of it. Yeah, knowing the protocol, the system, absolutely right. So the Polish code breakers who broke the code before World War II were working on this. Their method was based on these 6 letters here at the beginning. Particularly, they had little clues. So we know it's ABC, ABC, we know it's repeating, which means the first letter here and the 4th letter are actually the same.
They map to the same thing.
Yeah. And the 2nd letter and the 5th are the same, 3rd letter and the 6th letter are the same. So their methods was based on breaking those 6 letters of code, and that's the clue they're using. Now, if the Germans change their methods, and it's about protocol, it's not about the machine, it's about the protocol. Mm-hmm. If they change their protocol, the Polish methods won't work because it was based on this repetition. So now what the British had to do was think of a different method. The first job for Alan Turing is to think, if the Germans change this procedure, we better have something ready to go.
Right.
Right? So another nice little thing, and they do sort of do this in the film as well. I said the operators could pick these 3 letters, they would send it in plain, and then they would have these 3 letters here. That was a clue for the code breakers, because what the operators would do, and they're only human, is they would pick 6-letter words. So
this is the scene in the bar, isn't it, where she's saying the operator that I'm paired with. Yeah. He always starts with the name of his wife or something. Yeah.
And they do. So they do this in the film. They say, exactly that. There's an operator in the bar, in the pub, and she says, my counterpart on the German side always begins his messages the same way. He must have a girlfriend.
That's it.
Right, and this is where this comes in. So if I send...
This is like the old version of people using their pet's name as a password and stuff.
It is. It's using obvious passwords. That's what's happening. So if I'm sending BER in plain, I don't know if you can guess what the coded rest of this is. They might use LIN as their secret setting.
Right.
Like Berlin. If I use HIT...
LER.
LER, right?
Yeah.
And initials, right? And this is what they do in the film. So they might have their initials and their girlfriend's initials, and these were clues. So that's what the Army were doing and the Air Force. So now we should talk about why the Navy were different.
Yes, because you promised me that the Navy was more sophisticated, is it?
Yeah. It's all based on the protocol. The Navy Enigma machine was the same as the Army and Air Force machine, right? So it had the same rotors, had the same wiring, it was the same machine. I will tell you though that the Army were picking 3 rotors out of a box of 5. The Navy would pick 3 rotors out of a box of 8.
Right.
So for the Army, there's 60 ways of picking 3 out of 5. For the Navy, you're picking 3 out of 8, 336 ways of doing that. So there's more possibilities.
Yeah.
So okay, more possibilities still. That's not a disaster. The procedures were different. So what they were doing is they had their instruction books, set your machine, you have a ground setting as well in there, and then you had a separate book, and from a separate book you were asked to pick 2 triplets of letters. We'll make up an example. W-O-T. That's not meant to spell a word. I just made a thing up. And then a second triplet, you can make one up.
W-A-M.
Rot and wham. I don't know why we're doing that. So you pick these two triplets of letters. Now, you see how I've arranged them?
Yeah.
So I've put them in two rows offset. The operator was then asked to pick two random letters themselves, just like we've been doing. And I'll just make my life easier and say they picked two random letters there, A and Z. And they've made 4 pairs. They then go to another book called a Bigram table, if you want the name. It turns pairs of letters into different pairs of letters. It's a substitution, but it's turning pairs into another pair. So they would take each one, they would turn that into a different pair. So we're going to turn these 4 pairs into another 4 pairs. And I'm going to use red for code. So let's say AW becomes BD. So we've got these. We then send that at the beginning of the message. At the other end, they would receive this 8 letters of code, right? Or 8 letters of code, yeah. And they would get their code book. They would then decode this.
Right, okay.
Right, they're getting these pairs back.
So they will return...
So they're reversing this.
AWRA, okay.
They're getting these pairs back. They would write it like I've written it here. So they've now known that the triplets are this triplet here at the top. And this triplet is just a check that they're on the same day. And then they would get this triplet here, WAM. No, there's still a step to go. So they've got WAM. They would then type that into their Enigma machine using the ground setting, which is written down in their instructions. So you type WAM. Let's use my purple. Type that in to my Enigma machine, and it would create 3 letters. And IYS is the secret setting for the rest of the message.
Right.
So the secret setting here, the operator could pick it. And he was transmitting it in code, but the operator was choosing it. And that gave us little clues into it as well. But no, the Navy were different. They didn't let the operators pick the secret setting. They pick these out of the code book. They take this second triplet, put it into the Enigma code machine. It is effectively making a randomized.
Yeah, I was just about to say this is like an old school way of generating 3 random letters, because you started with what someone might have made up, but in the way that it's all been kind of paired together, it's been permuted into something, I don't know if random, technically random, but pretty much random. Yeah.
So where we're using human mistakes for the Army and Air Force, we can't do the same.
That was immune to the human element.
We can't do the same for the Navy. Now, that procedure, and we talked about how important protocol is. They've got the machine on one hand, but we've got protocol. That procedure was not known to the Polish. So this Army and Air Force was broken by the Polish code breakers. Fantastic. But they had not worked out what the Navy were doing, because the Navy were doing something completely different. They had this code book.
Yeah, this is full-blown, like, you know, treehouse best friends level of encryption here.
The Polish method does work for Army and Air Force. They did not succeed breaking Navy Enigma. This was an open problem for Alan Turing. So when Alan Turing reported for duty at Bletchley Park, which he did straight away, first day, he's there, he was put in charge of what's called HUT 8. HUT 8 was the department for breaking the Navy Enigma code, which was an unsolved problem.
Right, okay. So this is really what he was doing because they might change the protocol.
Because they might change the protocol, and we don't even know the Navy protocol.
Right, got it.
Turing deduces this protocol here. He deduces that without stealing the code books.
Right.
And this Bigram table, this code book that turns pairs into different pairs, it's a substitution code. We don't have that. And so Alan Turing...
I was just about to say, what was the weakness of this? Yeah. And I thought you were going to maybe say this is, but if we didn't even have...
We don't have this code book. So Alan Turing partly deduces what that code book is, and that substitution code. From ciphers, just by studying the messages they're getting in. He partly deduces that. A little bit later, 1940, missions that end up grabbing codebooks off German ships confirms what Alan Turing had deduced.
Right, okay, so he sort of independently figured it out, and then it was confirmed later.
Yeah. Helpful though.
Yeah, good to check your work, isn't it? But that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
If the weakness of this one is in the using your pet as a password, what's the weakness of this one?
So it wasn't the same weakness, and that's where we get to using what they called cribs. It's basically guessing a word or a phrase that might be in that message, which means ignoring all of this.
Yeah.
So Turing's method for breaking Enigma is nothing to do with this. So you're getting this code in, you don't know what it says, it's in code. You're trying to guess a word or a phrase that might appear in that code. So maybe it does end with Heil Hitler.
Heil Hitler, yeah.
And they do this in the film, lovely. And it's hilarious that these operators were ending messages with Heil Hitler.
Yeah, so I've always wondered this. Like, why would you do that? Because I know, obviously, it's a fascist dictatorship and you want to end every message with Heil Hitler, but, like, from a security point of view, that seems to be pretty bad.
It's a mistake.
Yeah.
And they're not always doing this. Not every message ended with Heil Hitler, and there are other clues. And they had a set list of common words and phrases that turn up in these messages. And they're military messages, so there'd be a format to these military messages. So there'd be things that they would use a lot. Nice story, there'd be one guy who was in a boring post. Nothing ever happened to him. Every day he sent a message saying nothing to report. Well, great, leave him alone. Don't attack him. Because every day he says nothing to report.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can use that, right? So we're thinking, okay, let's use the Heil Hitler. So you're thinking, maybe this message ends with Heil Hitler. So I'm thinking somewhere near the end, at the end of this code, Heil Hitler, 10 letters. I reckon there's 10 letters near the end of that code is Heil Hitler. And we have a clue as well. A letter can't become itself in Enigma. It's the code breakers do that first. So they're sliding that little guess underneath first. And now they've got 10 letters of code where they think, I becomes H, W becomes E, P becomes I. Right?
Sure, yeah.
So they've got a little bit of code that's been broken. We're guessing we've broken this little bit here. Right? So we've got some connections between our guess and the code. Right? So we think this becomes this becomes this becomes this. Right. So now we can wire that into the back of the bomb machine. So you go around the back of the machine, we think that letter becomes that letter becomes that letter becomes that letter. Now you run the bomb machine and it has basically 12 simultaneous Enigma machines and a click, click, click running through the positions of the wheels, and they'll stop when all that makes sense, when all that becomes true. So when that bit of code says Heil Hitler.
And could it be the case that after it's run, it's just happened to find, coincidentally, a setting that produces that string of... Because it's not that it's unlikely, but it's not unheard of in 150 million settings that, by coincidence, you will decrypt that.
I'm glad you asked me that. It's a great question.
It's almost like we planned this video.
We haven't. No, you're absolutely, and that can happen. So by coincidence, the machine can stop, and it would stop a few times actually, and you would have to go and check if it works. You can reduce the chance of a false stop, which I don't think I have done on Numberphile. So you can have this.
Here we go.
So what turns out to be better is clues with loops. So if we're saying we've got our Heil Hitler.
Can I just say, when I started this channel, never in a million years did I think that would be written on my board.
It's really difficult to write something like this down.
Yeah.
So let's say that turns into a code, okay? So let's say H becomes L. And let's say over here, though, L becomes T. And let's say here, T here in Hitler has become H. And I've made a little loop here. H becomes L, L becomes T, T becomes H. So if I take these 3 Enigma machines, it's basically one Enigma machine, but in different positions. But let's say we take an Enigma machine and we offset them in 3 different positions. So this is position 1, position 7, and position 8. But imagine now it's 3 Enigma machines. One in position 1, this one 6 steps later, position 7. Here 1 step later, position 8. Okay, so I've got 3 Enigma machines, and they've made a little loop. H becomes an L, L becomes a T, T becomes an H. I could take my 3 Enigma machines and wire them together. So they go, if I put an H into the first one, it becomes L becomes T in the next one, T becomes H, and it loops back into the first machine. Now, the point is, so H has gone through the loop and has come back to H. Yes? Now, to do that at random would be 1 in 26. Right? So if a letter matched with itself at random, it'd be 1 in 26 chance. Right?
Sure, yeah.
So the chance of that happening at random is 1 in 26. But if you're in the right position, right, this is a much more difficult condition to satisfy, right? So if that happens at random, it's 1 in 26. If we have more loops, by the way, then it's 1 in 26 for each loop. So I have 3 of those loops. Then the chance of it satisfying that condition at random is quite difficult.
Yeah.
It'd be 1 in 26 times every loop that you've got. 1 in 26, 1 in 26, 1 in 26. So to satisfy it at random would be quite unlikely. So if it is satisfied, which the bomb machine would find, if it is satisfied, that's probably the correct position.
Okay, got it.
Rather than a fluke.
Yes.
So they did change their procedures. The Germans did change their procedures. So they stopped sending 6 letters like this. So they would just send their message setting as 3 letters. That happened in May 1940. So it's 6 months into the war. But fortunately, we already had the bomb machines going by that point. So we could use Turing's method after that. And it is Turing's method. So when I first learned about the Enigma story, I knew that Alan Turing was the famous codebreaker. But I said, but is he? I'm sure it's a group effort. Has it been romanticized? Was he really like the best codebreaker? Is that true? I think it is true.
Right, okay. Well, at least...
So this was his idea. The bomb machine is his idea. That method is his idea. And if you go into the history of it and you could dig into it, a lot of the big code-breaking ideas that they had started with Alan Turing.
With him, yeah.
It was coming from him, a lot of it. He was the lead codebreaker.
Got it. So, it's kind of nice in a way that it is a romanticized story, but still based on the idea that, he was really the genius behind it. Thank you so much for watching, and once again a massive thank you to James for coming here and filming. It was just great to meet and nerd out about all things Turing. A massive thank you to my patrons whose names are scrolling by right now, and if you want to support me, see my link in the description. You'll get exclusive access to our Discord server, extended cuts of select videos, including this one where James and I just carry on talking for a long while about Turing and all that good stuff, and much, much more, so please check that out. This has been another Proof Under Another Roof. Until next time.